Quarter past the hour here in Moscow, it's RT International. This weekend, Russia will mark one of the most significant and solemn holidays in its calendar, the 70th anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. And today, we're looking at one of the most tragic and harrowing chapters of the war, that of the siege of Leningrad. Leningrad, now known as St. Petersburg, was among the main strategic targets for Nazi Germany. Its goal was to lay the city to waste by bombing it and starve its population to death. RT's Medina Kochanova went to St. Petersburg to read the letters of those who were part of the tragedy.
When you walk down the street, you come across dead bodies carried on sledges all the time. Most of them were being thrown into mass graves because people had no strength to make a coffin and dig out a grave.
This is Svetlana. She was only 7 years old when the war broke out. Born in Leningrad, she shows me around her city that still bears grim memories of a dire struggle.
А вот здесь вот она лежала. Она лежала головой сюда. Ноги у нее были вот около этой трубы. Труба эта тоже была. Ноги у нее были около трубы. Такие ноги ужасно черные. Ужасно черные. Ой, пришла. Ой, Господи. Ой, потом уже, это был мой первый, так скажем, случай, когда я увидела.
Hunger was soon joined by cold. The winter of 1941 saw temperatures plunge to minus 40 degrees Celsius.
With no heating, the entire water supply network of the city had frozen solid, meaning people's taps ran completely dry. The only solution for an already starving but now thirsty population was to head out onto the frozen river and collect water from holes in the ice.
Excerpts from people's diaries reveal the scope of disaster.
People wander around the city holding empty buckets, searching for water. There is no water. The pipes are frozen. We will all die and be covered with snow.
By the end of this dark winter, people were driven to madness, and some very troubling things began to take place.
Cases of cannibalism started to appear. You walk down the street and you see a corpse. You walk back and see there is a piece missing.
Attacks on women and children have begun.
А детей воровали зачем?
Чтобы съесть. Этого не надо бояться. Это было, и это все знали, что это было.
These were some of the darkest moments of the siege, which was finally lifted at the start of 1944. Medina Kochanova, RT, St. Petersburg.
And amid the starvation and the suffering, the people of Leningrad could hear a persistent beat. That's called the Leningrad metronome.
Говорит штаб местной противовоздушной обороны. Воздушная тревога! Воздушная тревога!
Many lives were indeed saved by those sirens that went off before every bombardment, with a human voice warning of an impending attack. There were also regular radio broadcasts about the situation on the battlefields, the only remaining source of information in the besieged city. And 78-year-old Tatiana Korsakova is one of those who survived the horrors of the Leningrad blockade. She told us how they managed to save the life of her infant sister.
Моя сестренка, которая родилась в августе 41 года, она умирала.
Я видела, как подергивались ее ручки, как закатывались глазки. Но бабушка, она где-то в каких-то уголках, в чайных коробках нашла несколько чаинок, заварила чай, несколько крупиц песка и вот этим заваренным чайком отпоила мою сестренку, отогрела ее, растирая варежкой. Сестренка выжила.
Do stay with RT International for more of our special coverage throughout the week. And at RT.com as well, more memories and accounts from World War II and the victory over Nazism. It's RT International. US President Barack Obama counting down the months until he leaves office. At last month's star-studded Correspondents' Dinner, he entertained guests with an array of jokes about his impending departure.
I look so old, John Boehner's already invited Netanyahu to speak at my funeral. My advisors asked me, Mr. President, do you have a bucket list? And I said, well, I have something that rhymes with bucket list. Take executive action on immigration? Bucket. I just had to put this stuff aside. I've got to stay focused on my job.
Well, however, it appears that some Americans are not too happy with his performance. A new Reuters poll revealing most of them preferred TV presidents to their real-life leader. Even morally challenged Frank Underwood from the House of Cards appeared more popular, even though he murdered a congressman and a journalist. And some of Obama's critics also think perhaps he could have spent less time on the golf course and more time working on policy.
He said, the hell with it, I'm not going to do this anymore. I want to rest and I want to do other things, including going out playing golf. This guy played hundreds of rounds of golf.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Oh, did you guys see that one? Huh?
In the meantime, Barack Obama is under fire for leaving a long list of unsolved issues and broken promises. And one of them is his failure to curb military incursions into sovereign countries. As RT's Guyane Chichikan explains.
Foreign policy is going to be a major challenge for the next Democratic presidential candidate. He or she will have to address President Obama's legacy. His opponents have already begun doing that. Karl Rove, former advisor to George W. Bush, penned an op-ed lamenting how the next president will have to clean up, quote-unquote, the messes left by President Obama. Interesting coming from Karl Rove, considering his former boss started the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, which continue to this day, with the Islamic State terrorists being a consequence of the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. But the fact that the U.S. still remains entangled in those wars will be part of President Obama's legacy.
Next week, we will be ending our combat mission in Afghanistan.
Well, maybe only formally, because reports on the ground suggest that months after President Obama declared that the combat mission was over, the American military is regularly conducting airstrikes against low-level insurgent forces, as reported by the New York Times, also sending special operations troops directly into combat under the guise of training and advising. Roughly 10,000 U.S. troops will remain in Afghanistan throughout 2015, nearly twice the originally planned level. The Taliban are on the offensive again, and voices from the Pentagon suggest U.S. forces are not going to rush to the exit. This may remind President Obama's opponents and supporters of his own words.
We must define the nature and scope of this struggle, or else it will define us. We have to be mindful of James Madison's warning that no nation could preserve its freedom in the midst of continual warfare.
The U.S. military budget has never been as high as under President Obama, reaching $691 billion in 2010. In 2005, it was $479 billion. Today, it's at $560 billion. The House of Representatives has just approved a budget of $585 billion for the fiscal year 2016. It's an almost 20% increase in the last 10 years. Who now remembers the president's campaign pledge regarding the defense budget?
I will cut tens of billions of dollars in wasteful spending.
Under President Obama, the U.S. has bombed at least 7 countries, now carrying out airstrikes against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, where, according to the White House, the guidelines for avoiding civilian casualties are not as strict as previously announced by the president. Apparently, the strikes there don't have to meet the near certainty level. Also, the U.S. is currently involved in at least 2 civil wars, in Syria by arming the Syrian rebels, and in Yemen by supporting Saudi Arabia's bombing campaign there, all of which indicates how far we are from this.
The decade of war is now ending.
Or not. In Washington, I'm Ganesh Chekyan, RT.
It's RT International live from Moscow. Up next, Sophie Shevardnadze speaking to the head of the Kurdish All-Women Brigade about taking the fight to Islamic State.